she had a son with another man. And then Teal says to her, he had a tattoo of her, like a permanent image of her on his body for life. But he can't have a relationship of his own. Why? Why? Because she's a cult leader and she wants to control everybody, in my opinion, allegedly. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Sam. Thank you for stopping by. If you are not new here, thanks for coming back. I appreciate you so much. We are talking about The Deep End, which is the documentary that is streaming on Hulu that originally aired on Freeform, all about Teal Swan, and it's pretty controversial. If you missed my last video, I did a little bit of a mini deep dive on her because I had never heard of her before. So I had to figure out who she was and quickly realized that she is very problematic and is a cult leader. Now, before we really dive into this episode, I do want to give you a little bit of a trigger warning. We do talk about some sensitive topics inside of this episode. So if any of these topics are triggering to you, please exit this video and I will see you in a different one. All right, but let's get into it. So the first episode of The Deep End is titled The Lost Toys. So I'm going to go into her reaction video too, because she did a reaction video for each of the 4 episodes that were released. But inside of that reaction video, just really quick, she said that they titled the video The Lost Toys because of the reference to Rudolph. Now, she also said that she had no say in anything, and that's why she's been upset about the documentary. But she definitely implied inside of the reaction video that she had a say in the title of this episode. So I'm calling BS again, just like I was in the last video, that she is telling lies. She goes on and she says that she makes it sound like she views herself as King Moonraiser inside of Rudolph, and she's like bringing all of these misfit toys together at her events. The episode opens with Teal in a pool with another woman, and she's holding this woman up as she's floating, and the woman is convulsing and hysterically crying while Teal is comforting her inside of this pool. And then she tells her, "This is what it could be like. You can trust me." And then it cuts to this woman like just sobbing and screaming in the pool. It was really uncomfortable to watch and very strange. Okay, so we have a little bit of company now. The credits roll and it opens and it does the intro and everything. So she's in this dressing room and she's getting ready to go out and do this speaking engagement. And while they're showing that, they have like little subtitles come across the screen to kind of explain who she is and what she does. And it says that she offers spiritual guidance and techniques that offer to heal past trauma, which drives me crazy because she's not a licensed professional. So she's not licensed or certified to help people through trauma. And it's driving me crazy that nothing is happening to this woman and she's allowed to just go around and do these types of things. So then after she's all ready, she's sitting in the green room or the dressing room, whatever you want to call it. And she is talking to the guards about how she's concerned about the meet and greet. And the reason she's concerned about the meet and greet is because she doesn't want to be flanked. What? Excuse me? Why do you think your worshipers or fans are going to flank you? Like, do you have a guilty conscience? And then she goes on to tell the guards after she says she's afraid she's going to get flanked. She says that she's not like a typical celebrity because these people are listening to her at 3 a.m. when they want to unalive themselves. Okay, so after all of that is said and done, and she's finished talking about possibly being flanked at her meet and greet, they cut to a bunch of her fans and worshipers showing up to this event, and they are interviewing them and asking them all of these questions. So they're all talking about how much they admire Teal. And this one girl, she said she felt like Teal was there for her and that she takes notes on everything that Teal puts out. And another fan says that they drove 3 hours to get to an airport and then they flew 3 more hours to get to the event, and they had just gotten off the plane to go there, which is mind-blowing to me. I just don't understand understand how certain people, I guess it's probably because they're so vulnerable and they just want to feel better. I don't see how so many people can see through the cult-like mentality of this woman and they just follow her wherever she goes and take notes on whatever she's saying. I just don't get it. So then it cuts to these two women sitting in the audience. This woman is saying how Teal is so straightforward, and she says, everything we do in our family is by the book and following exactly what Teal says. If that doesn't scream cult, I don't know what else does. And then finally, Teal is up on stage and she's speaking, and she gives a warning about the triggers that are going to happen when she's up on stage. And then she says that she's a mirror, and what a mirror does is shows the reality. So she's just telling people, like, you might be triggered, but this is your reality. And then they do a bunch of Q&As on the stage, and you can just really tell that these people are very vulnerable and easy to prey on. And I feel like she's going after that specific group of people that have depression, that have any kind of mental illness, have any trauma in their past, are lonely, like anything that really messes with your head mentally. I feel like she's going after these people. I suffer from depression and I know how alone you can feel. The depth of which these people are suffering, they are just very vulnerable, and they'll do anything and pay any amount of money to have people around them that understand what they're going through and are there for them. So then she has a woman up on stage and she's doing like a Q&A with her. And this woman, you can tell, is clearly dealing with some deep depression issues. And she tells Teal that nothing in her life makes her happy and she can't figure out what would make her happy. Teal keeps asking her what makes her happy, and this woman just really doesn't know. Like, she doesn't have an answer. And then Teal says to her, "Excuse me, ma'am. Are you out of your mind? You don't ask that to someone that is in this state." But the woman didn't understand what Teal meant by that. So she thought that she was just asking her, "Why are you still here on stage?" And Teal clarifies, like, "No, why are you still here on the planet?" This woman had no idea what to say. She just kind of sat there and stared. What do you say to that? Like, excuse me? So then Teal goes on to say that people have an unnatural fear of death. And she tells her to play out both sides and make up her mind whether she basically wants to keep living or unalive herself. And it's public. Like, why isn't anybody doing anything? Why is this okay? I just don't get it. I don't get it, which is why I'm doing this whole series, because something needs to be done about this woman who is talking to people like this, and it's on camera. You can't tell me that they edited the footage and stitched it together. It shows her talking and saying these things. You said these things. You can't take them back. So at the end of this event, she actually did seem a little bit personable. Like, she was laughing and smiling, and I hadn't seen her do any of that stuff, like, genuinely in a video that I've watched on her Instagram or her YouTube or anything like that. Maybe I just didn't dig deep enough, but she always seems very, very monotone and blah. They cut to Teal inside of her meet and greet, and surprise, surprise, she's not getting flanked. They show a woman telling her that she saved her life, and then there's another man that came up and took a picture with her, and she just looked super annoyed, but he was all excited to meet her. He had a tattoo of her, like a permanent image of her on his body for life. That was all it showed. It was just the two fans. So I don't know how many people were at the meet and greet, if they were paid to be at the meet and greet, or maybe people kind of caught on to her shenanigans at this event and left before going to the meet and greet. I don't know. Then it shows her for the first time in this episode doing a confessional. So she's sitting in the chair and she's talking about how she never wanted to get into the business of the spiritual world. And we're going to touch on this again because she talks about it in her reaction video. So she says she never wants to get into this business of the spiritual world. She hated spirituality, and like, she emphasized how much she hated it. And then she states that she started making videos on YouTube and it just took off. Basically, she just went down the road of the spiritual route. From there, she gained a dedicated following, which she calls the Teal Tribe. That's not culty at all. Not at all. Then after her confessional, they have B-roll of footage of the news and TikToks and all of these commentary clips, people on YouTube, all of these things. Most of them are talking about how problematic she is, with tiny little sprinkles of people who adore her. And this is where we met Matthias. He is Teal's manager. He was being shown on a Zoom call with the rest of the team, and they were talking about growing millions of followers. It basically seemed like they are just worried about their cult-like following. They want to grow that. They're comparing it to Tony Robbins, which I don't agree with everything Tony Robbins does, but he does have some very valid points in my opinion, just not to the extreme that he takes it sometimes. They're comparing her to Tony Robbins' following and talking about how they want to match his following. I'm like,
you are out of your ever-loving mind.
That is never going to happen, because hopefully some kind of authorities are going to come and take you to wherever you have to go to stop being so problematic to these vulnerable people that need actual help from professionals. And I really think a lot of her following is like people just watching and waiting for the wreck to happen. And then this is where we meet Blake. He is titled as the head of ops. And I already know more than I should about him because I accidentally actually watched the 4th episode first. So I was really confused about who he was in the 4th episode, but now it all makes sense. So he's the head of ops and he is coloring Teal's hair. And now they have a very strange dynamic. And I really believe that she found him at a very vulnerable time for him and took advantage of him. They have been living together for 16 years. He actually met her when he was only 19. He states that when they first met, they connected and her eyes were like laser beams. And Blake is actually the one that helped Teal start the Ask Teal, which is her like famous Q&A thing on YouTube. And ever since then, they have been doing it once weekly and they have not missed a week. He goes on to say that Teal knows how bad the mind can get and she can beat the mind on any level of suffering. So to convince somebody of that when they're 19 and all of these years later, so they've lived together for 16 years, which makes him at least 35. He has believed Teal has this level of know-how to fix people's minds for all of these years. And that's a really hard thing to come back from and change your thought patterns, but I'm giving a little bit away. So we'll talk about that in the 4th episode review. Now, after all of those awkward vibes were happening with Teal and Blake, we went to see Teal in the recording studio. She was recording one of her books and she's talking about her abuse. Like I mentioned in my previous video, I think that this may be contributing. I'm no professional. This is in my opinion. I think that this may be a big contributing factor to the reason that she is the way she is and she's doing what she's doing. She's talking about her 13 years of abuse and torture that happened with a family member. She states that through all of this, she had a breakthrough that helped her design a process that can make the most wounded person whole again. Again, she's not a professional. It worked for her, maybe, but she can't just go around and say that she has this proven thing that is going to help everybody heal from trauma. So she goes on to say that she had this breakthrough, and this is where the completion process was birthed, which I'm going to do a whole deep dive on that after we watch all of these documentaries together and talk about those. But this is her certification process. I haven't dove deep enough to know exactly what it is yet, but it almost seems like she is running these people through a certification process that almost can confuse people to think that they are talking to a certified therapist. So I have to dive a little bit deeper into that, but that's where this completion process was birthed. So it is a 2-week certification process where they kind of go on a retreat. They show a group of people coming to this retreat for the completion process, and they are interviewing them and they're talking on camera. They're talking about how she speaks so much truth. And one woman stated how she felt like she was Jesus. Now, I think that the people who go to this retreat to go through the completion process, I think these are in my opinion, but almost definitely, these are the people that will kiss the ground she walks on and do anything she says, except for one person, which we're going to talk about in a minute or two. So after they're done talking to these people on camera, they show everybody sitting in a living room type area, and they're all sitting around in a circle, like they have their notebooks ready to take notes, and Teal's sitting at the front of the room facing them. She's just like really awkwardly staring at everyone, like everyone individually just moving around the room, just watching and looking at them. And it's silent. Everybody's sitting and staring back at her. So it's just like, this is weird. And she says that she needed a minute because she was trying to gauge everybody. Gauge them how? You're staring at them awkwardly. Anybody is going to be uncomfortable with that. So after she's done gauging all of these people, she states that she has a big problem with the mental health industry and how they approach things. And she says that they need to be asking the question, not what's wrong with you, but what happened to you. Basically, she's warning these people against the mainstream psychology. Something that I kind of want to discuss a little bit right here is that if you are seeing a professional that is not asking you what happened, then you are not seeing the right professional. Because in my experience with my depression and anxiety, any professional that I have seen wants to make sure we address the actual issue of why is this happening? Did something happen in my past? Is it from trauma? They aren't just saying, what's wrong with you? Like, that's not how it works when you go to somebody that is practicing the correct way and is trained to deal with these specific situations. After she has her little discussion with the group there for the completion process, she breaks them up into smaller groups to relive their trauma. Now, she talks about this in her reaction, so we're going to touch on this again. They get in small groups to relive their trauma so that they can start to resolve it. And now they show these two women together. I guess it was just groups of two or three, because this group was only two women, and they were sitting on a bed, and the woman is telling her how she feels angry and she has rage and she wants to her mother. She then starts to cry, rightfully so. Obviously, she has something from her past that is coming up and making her feel some type of way, and this anger towards her mother. She said that she's never had anyone there for her, and this other attendee, she's kind of insinuating that this is the first time she's ever had anybody there for her, and this woman is holding her hand and trying to console her like any compassionate human being would do. And this woman starts screaming that she wants to see her mom again and again and again. This doesn't need to be done at the completion process. This woman needs a professional to help her work through her trauma, not people at the completion process. We'll come back to this. So just remember that we talked about that. After all of these people have worked through their trauma, they are now in I want to say it was the kitchen. They were gathered around and singing and hugging. And then it shows this woman on the phone telling someone she's going to be different when she comes home. And this is what her life's purpose is. So with that, Teal is explaining the process, and she's saying how it's going to change things, like being ostracized from family, finding out you were married for the wrong reasons, and then realizing that you didn't want children. So, quote, what am I supposed to do now that I have these two kids? This leads to a man that I admire. I don't know his name, but if you are watching this video, thank you. He starts to ask Teal who she looks up to, like who was her mentor going through this experience and learning all of these things. She's very obviously annoyed with this question. You can tell right off the bat. She says that she doesn't look up to anybody. This gentleman says that he has some resistance to that. I don't remember exactly what he said, but I know he said he had resistance to it, and he just had to disagree with her. He continues to say that he was not there thinking that she has all of the right answers, and he's expressing all of the questions that he has. He also said that he doesn't have to agree with everything that is being said, which is a human right, my friends. You do not have to agree with anything anybody says ever in your life, no matter what they say to you. And again, she clearly is expressing that she's not okay with this. She accuses him of claiming that she is unsafe because she doesn't have a mentor. With that, he came back and said that he's just concerned because he has had people that he looked up to before, and later down the road, he found out that they were not actually the people that he thought they were. She then randomly says that she can ruin somebody's life with her skills. And then she gives some BS analogy, and she says that what he is saying is like comparing the fastest runners in the world and then telling the fastest that they can't teach him to run because they don't have anyone faster than them. Teal, if you're listening to this, that is not the same thing. It's just not. After that, Teal's back in confessional and she's talking about her childhood. She said that the awareness of being different was in kindergarten for her. She scared her mother because she was seeing other dimensional entities. But she also said earlier that she was not spiritual. This is where it gets interesting. Her mother sent her to therapy. She was diagnosed as schizophrenic, bipolar, and borderline until she saw an alternative practitioner. This alternative practitioner convinced her parents to take her on the weekends alone with him to help her. Obviously, we don't know if this is what actually happened, but this is what she is claiming to have happened. Her parents allowed this to happen, and this was he was taking her on these weekends and multiple times, and then he threatened her not to tell, and he was going to harm her family if she did tell. Now, she was then admitted to the psych ward for this is where she started her art, which we went over a little in the last video that I deep dived about her. Her beginning art was very creepy. It was like she cut out pictures of people. I don't know if it was from magazines or whatnot. She just made them look like they were crying blood or bleeding. It was creepy. All that to say, again, I'm not a professional. This is in my opinion. She doesn't come off as a stable person, and that would make sense if she was diagnosed with these mental illnesses and they have gone untreated for all of these years. So this could be another contributing factor to her being this problematic. So after she got out of the hospital, this is when she met Blake. She went to him and he bandaged her up and comforted her, and they claim they fell in love. She said that she felt safe and he was unconditional, and she had never experienced this before. She was never safe, and he taught her to trust. Blake, with his kind heart, said that he knew she was in so much pain and he just wanted to be there for her. Needless to say, Blake and Teal are no longer together. They have not been together for a very long time, but they still live together. She's been in 12 to 13 relationships since Blake and has been married 5 times. Blake stayed by her side for all of them. And after sticking by her side through all of that, she ended up having a son, which I'm very curious to dig a little deeper and figure out what's going on there. She had a son with another man. I don't know what happened to the father, but she says that Blake has been there for her son since day one. This dynamic is so mind-blowing that I just don't understand. I feel really sad for Blake because he really has been by her side since he was a kid and he doesn't know any different. So I think it's just maybe a safety for him to stay there and not have to deal with any kind of pain that he might be in from anything that he's been through in his past. This is where we meet Juliana. Juliana is now Blake's girlfriend, but they do not live together. She actually lives in a different country. When we meet her, she is talking about how she has struggled to find real connection in her life. She has always felt isolated, and she was searching for a community when she found Teal. So again, vulnerable. She started watching Teal's videos on YouTube, and then she went through the completion process. And this is where she met Blake. She felt like he understood her and where she was at. Juliana is packing to leave and come and live with Blake for a little while. She's sitting down to talk to her mom after she finishes packing, and her mom is having a lot of trouble with her leaving. She's very visibly upset. Juliana said that she just feels like it's the right thing. Her mom then says she had a strange feeling about it and she was scared for her. That woman is a smart woman. After they have this conversation and her mom tells her this, they cut to Blake and Teal in a hot tub, and Teal is not happy that Juliana is coming to live with them. She states that they need to talk about this woman, is how she put it, and she's not happy about her coming. She said that she's afraid that he's going to be totally fixated, and reminds him that he has a lot of responsibilities, and she feels like he wants to just live life without thinking of any of the consequences. Why can he stick by you for all of these years through all of these relationships and help you with your son, but he can't have a relationship of his own? Why? Because she's a cult leader and she wants to control everybody, in my opinion, allegedly. Anyway, Teal's really mad. You can tell she's pissed. She then says that anyone that gets to know them has an instantaneous platform, and she's worried that Juliana will tell people about living with Teal and being part of her community. If you did not have a guilty conscience, if you knew that everything you were doing was okay and it wasn't harmful to anybody, then why would you be so nervous about your friend's girlfriend coming to live with him? The writing's on the wall here. After that uncomfortable, heated discussion, Teal is now back on the stage. She is talking to another woman for another Q&A, and the woman is telling Teal that she can't seem to decide between life, and she's asking Teal, how do you know if your time is done or not? And Teal says, if you're still asking that question, it's not done. Like, that is not the right answer. This woman is clearly a harm to herself, because if you are questioning life and yourself, you need help, and there's nothing wrong with that. Getting help is going to make you a stronger person and get you through these hard times. If you need help, go and get it. It's there for you. I just don't understand how Teal can just go and say, if you're asking yourself this question, it's not done yet. That woman is going to feel better for maybe 5 minutes and then be contemplating that again the next day. So she needs professional help. Now, as she's talking to her, she asks the audience, by raise of hands, how many of you feel like you're not doing okay at all? Almost everyone raises their hands. Teal then says that it saddens her that everyone feels so lonely. Now, this is just more proof that she is preying on these vulnerable people and using their loneliness and mental health as a way to pull them in and get them into her community / cult and just really brainwash them. Now, this is where the controversy came in, and this is how it ended. They again had B-roll of creators and voiceovers talking about her problematic behavior. One man points out that her platforms are not regulated, and that is such a good point. Like, yeah, I love YouTube and I love being here on YouTube. YouTube is my job because I manage my clients' channels as well. So I wouldn't want YouTube to go anywhere, but it's so true that it's not regulated in these types of things. Like, people can just go out and give advice like this and not have any repercussions, whether they are certified, licensed, or what have you. They can go on and give this advice, just like life coaches and business coaches. They don't have to have any experience or proven tools that have worked for other people besides themselves in the past. So, I mean, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of these things, none of them are regulated to the extent that they should be for the mental health world. Now, after he explained that, this is where it cuts to the woman being interviewed about her daughter's of herself and saying that she believes that Teal's teaching played a role in that. I think that this is played out in most of the series because they were still discussing it a little bit in the 4th episode that I accidentally watched, which we'll get to. But That's a problem. She was a follower of Teal. After the woman was being interviewed and it was showing those clips, it cuts to Teal and it ends with her saying she wants to get to the point of being more spiritually influential than the Pope. And that's how we ended it. That was the end of episode 1. It was glorious. Now we get into Teal's reaction. And again, like I said, for this reaction video, she was very monotone and very blah. And so when it opens up, she just states that she wants you to remember that we're watching a TV show done about her, and she got no payment and had no control over it. But again, going back to the title of the episode, she implied that she had part in titling the episode. So you had some kind of say in it. You had say in whether you did it or not. You can't just assume that everybody's going to put you in a positive light. Maybe instead of thinking about the exposure you're going to get, you should think about maybe how are they going to portray me next time. So she says that she wants to start with the positives, and there weren't that many. So she goes on to say that it's visually beautiful and she loved the testimonials from the people who understood her, obviously. And obviously she thinks it's beautiful because the whole thing was covered in her art that we looked at in my last video. Like she had curtains with the art, she was wearing her clothes with the art, it was everywhere. The art was everywhere. So of course she thought it was visually beautiful. Then she says that the episode made it clear that she is all about the truth. I am not sure about that. I think that you are all about the brainwashing, in my opinion, allegedly. Then she says that she was very happy about the scene where she explains the difference between healing and just feeling better. This was the scene with the completion process attendees. She also said that she got to present to the world regarding mental health, and that we need to start asking again, what happened to you instead of what's wrong with you? And I already went into how I feel about that. Again, just to reiterate, if you are seeing a professional that is asking you what is wrong with you instead of what happened, you need a new provider to help you through whatever you're going through. And I'm sorry that they are treating you that way. She claims that she's trying to create positive change in the mental health field, and she believes that this episode displayed that. I would probably have to disagree with that because of the way that she handled the 2 women that she talked to on stage that were showing signs of. She then said that she was very proud of the student that called home to tell her family that she was going to come home a changed woman and it was her life's work. She also explains how there was hours of footage and it was edited and taken out of context. She explains that these subjects are too complex to simplify with sound bites. That's one way to cover up how much of a scam you are. She was talking about how she was watching it with her team, and at one point she pointed to the TV and said, "Who is that? I don't like her very much." And she said that she was talking about herself. She basically said that they portrayed her as being hard, harsh, cold, dismissive, competitive, and angry. And I would have to agree with that. And her YouTube videos also come across the same way. Like there's no warmth there. It's very monotone. It's very serious. There is no warmth to her. And this is where she brings up the guy that was questioning her on not having a mentor. She claims that this conversation went on a lot longer, but it was cut down in a way to make her look like she has no tolerance for being questioned. She was still pissed off. So if it went on longer, then he just asked you more questions to piss you off more because you were still pissed off and you were giving that analogy about runners. She clearly did not like being questioned, but she then claims that she invites questions. I have not seen her invite questions at all. Oh, and this is where she talked about how she said she didn't want to get into the spiritual world. She claims that what she actually said was that she never wanted to get into it because spirituality had hurt her in the past. She claims that these segments were pieced together to make it sound like she said that she never wanted to work in the spiritual world. And that was it. Oh, and I forgot, she talked about this too. She said that those 2 women, that one that was talking about her mom and dealing with that trauma, she said that the women were helping each other and she was kind of trying to imply that they were acting. But if you saw that scene, you can tell that it was clearly not acting. That was real trauma that was coming up for her. And then she claims that they always have licensed therapists on scene, but I feel like for that level of trauma, it just shouldn't be happening in that setting, period, in my opinion. Of course, she claims that she does not condone yourself, but she clearly doesn't know the logistics behind what should be done for somebody when they are talking about that topic. She claimed also that the part where she said that she wants to be more spiritual than the Pope was supposed to be a joke, and it was edited to make it seem like she was in a competition with the Pope. Okay. And then the last thing she talked about was just the conversation that they had in the hot tub regarding Blake and Juliana. She said that she was just worried about them winging it and hoping for the best, and that she's a public figure, so she has to be more guarded. I would love to know what your thoughts are on her thinking that she's going to be flanked and she has to be guarded about everybody. I'm going to go watch the next episode, and I will see you next time.